Rain slashed against the grimy windows of Marcus Flynn's office, illuminated by the neon glow of Neo-Tokyo's perpetual twilight. He stared at the bottom of his empty glass, wondering if it was worth filling again. The flickering holoscreen on his desk displayed his gambling debts in unforgiving red numbers, a sum that seemed to grow more insurmountable each day. A knock interrupted his brooding. The door slid open before he could respond, revealing a figure too pristine for this part of town, a woman in a tailored charcoal suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. The Quantum Dynamics logo glimmered on her lapel. "Mr. Flynn?" Her voice was as crisp as her appearance. "I'm Naomi Chen, Executive Security Liaison for Quantum Dynamics." Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk, not bothering to hide the clutter of case files and empty food containers. "What can a small-time PI do for a corporate giant like QD?" She placed a sleek data pad on his desk. "We have a sensitive situation requiring your specific background in both human and non-terrestrial affairs." Marcus snorted. 5 years in Neo-Tokyo's Xenocrime division before his spectacular fall from grace hardly made him an expert. "Go on. We need you to locate and apprehend a fugitive." Chen tapped the datapad, projecting a hologram of a humanoid female with iridescent blue skin, silver-white hair, and eyes like liquid mercury. "Illyria, a Lyrian scientist formerly employed by our biotechnology division. She absconded with proprietary research materials of considerable value." "Dangerous?" Marcus asked, studying the alien's features. Something about her eyes seemed too intelligent, too aware for a simple corporate thief. "Extremely. Lyrians possess natural telepathic abilities, though hers are unusually developed. She's manipulative, cunning, and has demonstrated violent tendencies when cornered." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Why me? QD has security forces that make military units look like playground monitors. Your familiarity with both Neo-Tokyo's underbelly and alien psychology makes you uniquely qualified. Additionally, we require discretion. A corporate security team would attract attention." "Attention you don't want," Marcus finished for her. "What's she really carrying, Ms. Chen?" Chen's expression remained perfectly neutral. "That's classified. What matters is that you find her before she can sell our intellectual property to competitors or worse, release it publicly." Marcus tapped his fingers on the desk. "My services aren't cheap." Chen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Quantum Dynamics understands value, Mr. Flynn." She named a figure that made Marcus's breath catch, enough to clear his debts with plenty left over. "Half now, half upon completion." "And if I refuse?" "Then we approach someone else." Chen glanced meaningfully at the holoscreen displaying his financial ruin. "Though I suspect you won't." Marcus stared at the rotating image of Illyria. Beautiful, dangerous, and valuable, the perfect trifecta of trouble. Yet beneath his cynicism, something else stirred. Working a real case again, something that mattered. Maybe redemption wasn't entirely out of reach. "I'll need data. Last known locations, associates, habits, anything you have." Chen nodded, looking pleased. "It's all in the file. We've also taken the liberty of providing equipment upgrades." She gestured to the door where a security officer waited with a sleek case. Standard tracking tech, weapons with non-lethal options, and communication secure from even the most advanced alien interference. "Thoughtful," Marcus muttered, already scrolling through Illyria's file. Her career with QD spanned 3 years, impressive for a non-human. Her specialization was xenogenetics, specifically cross-species genetic modification. "Interesting. One last thing, Mr. Flynn." Chen's voice hardened. "This assignment has a time-sensitive nature. 5 days. After that, the nature of her stolen research becomes irreversibly problematic." "Meaning?" "Meaning failure is not an option, for any of us. After Chen left, Marcus poured himself that drink after all, studying Illyria's face in the hologram. Behind those mercury eyes lay secrets worth millions, or billions. But something about Chen's story didn't add up. As the rain hammered against his window, Marcus made a decision. He'd find Illyria alright, but before handing her over to QD, he'd discover what made this alien scientist so valuable that one of the most powerful corporations in the solar system was willing to pay a fortune to a washed-up detective to bring her in quietly. Little did he know that this decision would plunge him into a conspiracy that would change his life, and possibly the future of human-alien relations, forever. The neon labyrinth of Neo-Tokyo's alien district pulsed with life as Marcus navigated the crowded streets. Holographic advertisements featuring interspecies products flickered overhead, casting multicolored shadows across his face. He'd spent 12 hours following Illyria's digital trail, and all signs pointed to the Nexus, a notorious trading hub where different alien cultures mingled with humans desperate for off-world thrills. Marcus adjusted the collar of his synth leather jacket, ensuring the QD-issued tracker remained concealed. The weight of the non-lethal pulse pistol pressed against his ribs, a reminder of the stakes. His neural implant pinged, displaying a notification through his retinal interface. Facial recognition had picked up a Lyrian female entering the Silver Nebula, a club known for catering to telepathic species. Finally, he muttered, making his way toward the establishment's glowing entrance. Inside, the Silver Nebula assaulted his senses. Low-frequency sounds designed to stimulate telepathic pleasure centers vibrated through the floor, while pheromone mists created a haze that hung over the dance floor. Crystalline structures throughout the club fractured light into patterns incomprehensible to human eyes but supposedly meaningful to various non-terrestrial patrons. Marcus approached the bar, ordering a synthetic whiskey from a Vesperian bartender whose translucent limbs moved with unsettling grace. "Looking for someone?" the bartender asked, multifaceted eyes glinting with knowing amusement. Marcus slid a high-denomination credit chip across the counter. "Lyrian female, arrived recently. Keeps to herself." The Vesperian's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Many Lyrians value privacy. Especially those with unusual business interests. This one's a scientist. Name's Illyria. The bartender stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Second level, private booth near the meditation chambers. But a word of caution, human, she has protection." Marcus nodded his thanks, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. As he climbed the gravity-adjusted stairs to the second level, his neural implant flagged unusual energy signatures ahead, biotechnology, expensive and unregistered. He spotted her instantly. Even partially concealed in the booth's shadows, Illyria's luminescent blue skin caught the ambient light. She was taller than her hologram suggested, with an elegance to her movements that seemed almost predatory. Across from her sat a Meridian arms dealer Marcus recognized from his police days, a creature comprised of swirling smoke contained within a humanoid exoskeleton. Marcus positioned himself at the adjacent booth, enhancing his audio receptors to eavesdrop. "The price remains as stated," Illyria was saying, her voice melodic despite the tension in it. "The data is worth 10 times what I'm asking." The Meridian's response came as a hissing whisper. "Your former employers have placed a substantial bounty on your capture. That increases my risk. My research could save millions of lives across multiple species. Quantum dynamics intends to weaponize it." Marcus frowned. This contradicted Chen's briefing entirely. Was Illyria spinning a cover story, or was QD lying about her theft? Their conversation abruptly halted. Illyria's mercury eyes swept the room, lingering for a moment on Marcus's position. He felt a strange pressure against his consciousness, a gentle probing that set off alarms in his neural implant. She knew he was there. In one fluid motion, Illyria stood and moved toward the back exit. The Meridian dissolved into the crowd. Marcus followed, keeping his distance while activating the tracker's enhanced capabilities. Outside, Neo-Tokyo's infamous acid rain had begun to fall, sizzling against the environmental shields that protected the streets. Marcus tracked Illyria through increasingly derelict neighborhoods, where the shields flickered intermittently, forcing him to deploy his jacket's emergency hood. The chase led him to the ruins of Old Tokyo, a partially submerged district abandoned after the Great Quake of 2079. Only the desperate or the dangerous ventured here, where crumbling skyscrapers leaned against each other like dying giants and corporate monitoring was mysteriously absent. Marcus's neural implant crackled with interference as he entered a decaying transit station. Water dripped from fractured ceilings, pooling around debris and the occasional remains of pre-war technology. His enhanced vision caught a flicker of movement ahead, a flash of blue skin disappearing around a corner. "Illyria," he called out, abandoning stealth. "I just want to talk." Humans always just want to talk before they start shooting. Her voice echoed through the cavernous space, impossible to pinpoint. "If I wanted to shoot, I'd have done it at the Silver Nebula." A mirthless laugh resonated from somewhere above. Then quantum dynamics chose their hunter poorly. Or perhaps. She emerged from shadows that seemed too shallow to have concealed her, standing on a collapsed platform 10 meters above. "Perhaps you're beginning to question your employers. Wondering why they want a geneticist so badly." Marcus kept his posture non-threatening but remained alert. "They say you stole proprietary research. Is that what Naomi-chan told you?" Illyria's eyes narrowed. "Did she also tell you that they've been experimenting with species-specific bioweapons? That they can now target genetic markers unique to Lyrians? Or humans? You expect me to believe a trillion-credit corporation is developing illegal bioweapons? I expect nothing from you, Detective Flynn. Your kind rarely disappoints in that regard." She moved closer to the edge of the platform, studying him. "But since you tracked me this far, perhaps you deserve to see what I stole." She raised her hand, revealing a small iridescent data crystal. "This contains proof of quantum dynamics Xenocide program. Evidence that would collapse their stock and trigger planetary sanctions." Marcus's instincts warred within him. The hardened ex-cop recognized a con when he heard one. The detective sensed the ring of truth. Before he could respond, the station's emergency lighting flared to life. Armored figures poured in from multiple entrances, not QD security, but black market mercenaries. Someone else was hunting Illyria. "Time to choose sides, Detective," Illyria called out as weapons charged around them. "Though I suspect we're both out of good options." The first energy pulse struck near Marcus's position, superheating ancient concrete to molten slag. He rolled behind a fallen column, pulse pistol ready. Above, Illyria had disappeared again. What had begun as a straightforward retrieval job had just transformed into something far deadlier. And as mercenaries closed in from all sides, Marcus realized that finding Illyria had been the easy part. Surviving what came next would be the real challenge. Energy blasts tore through the decaying transit station as Marcus returned fire, his pulse pistol discharging blue arcs of electricity that temporarily paralyzed two approaching mercenaries. The others advanced methodically, their exoarmor absorbing shots that would have incapacitated unprotected targets. "This way." Illyria's voice cut through his combat focus. She had reappeared at a partially collapsed maintenance tunnel, her mercury eyes reflecting the firefight's chaotic light. Marcus had seconds to decide. Trust the alien fugitive or face overwhelming odds alone. With a muttered curse, he sprinted toward her, ducking energy blasts that left scorched trails across ancient walls. "Who are they?" he demanded as they plunged into the darkness of the tunnel. "Freelancers hired by Arcturus Security, QD's deniable operations contractor." Illyria moved with preternatural grace through the darkness, her bioluminescent skin providing just enough light to navigate. They use them when they need problems permanently eliminated rather than solved. And I wasn't permanent enough? Marcus's neural implant struggled to maintain orientation as they descended deeper beneath Old Tokyo. You were Plan A, the legitimate retrieval. I suspect Ms. Chen always had Plan B in motion. Illyria paused at a junction, her slender fingers pressing against the wall as if reading something through touch. This way. The tunnel eventually opened into an abandoned maintenance facility that had been converted into a makeshift living space. Portable energy fields hummed softly, powering environmental scrubbers and rudimentary security systems. Holographic displays showed various parts of the ruins above, confirming they hadn't been followed. Marcus kept his distance, pulse pistol lowered but ready. Nice setup for someone on the run. I've been preparing for this eventuality for months. Illyria moved to a concealed panel, retrieving a medkit. She approached Marcus, who flinched involuntarily. You're bleeding. He touched his temple, fingers coming away red. Shrapnel, probably. He hadn't even noticed. I can treat that, she offered. Lyrian medicine is compatible with human physiology. We were among the first species to develop successful xenotransplantation procedures. The geneticist, Marcus acknowledged, reluctantly allowing her to examine the wound. Xenogeneticist, specifically. My research focused on cross-species genetic therapy. Her touch was cool as she applied a translucent gel that immediately numbed the pain. I specialized in identifying and treating conditions that affect multiple sentient species. Not developing bioweapons that target specific DNA markers. Her hands paused, mercury eyes meeting his directly. That was what quantum dynamics redirected my research toward, without my knowledge or consent. The bitterness in her voice seemed too genuine to fake. When I discovered their true intention, I gathered evidence and attempted to leave through proper channels. Let me guess, they didn't accept your resignation letter. A smile flickered across her face, transforming her alien features into something unexpectedly familiar. They offered a generous retirement package. Permanent retirement. Marcus holstered his weapon, decision made. Show me what you stole. Illyria inserted the data crystal into a specialized reader. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing molecular structures, gene sequences, and laboratory footage. Marcus wasn't a scientist, but even he could recognize the testing footage for what it was, gruesome trials on living subjects, both alien and human. They call it Project Eclipse, a genetic targeting system that can be programmed to attack specific DNA configurations, Illyria explained, her voice clinical despite the horror in her eyes. It can be deployed as an aerosol, through water systems, or even transmitted as a tailored virus. The victim's own cells become self-destructive, targeting organs and systems until complete failure occurs. Bioweapons have been illegal under the Sol Proxima Accords for 15 years, Marcus said, paging through classified memos that detailed planned deployment scenarios. Laws mean little to corporations that operate between worlds. They've developed variants that could eliminate specific alien populations while leaving humans unaffected. Others that could target genetic markers common in certain human ethnic groups. The possibilities for genocide are. She trailed off, unable to continue. Marcus studied her face, searching for deception and finding only exhaustion and fear. Why run? Why not take this to the authorities? Quantum Dynamics has board members from every major governing body in the system. The project has quiet approval from elements within Earth's military and intelligence services. I tried official channels. 3 colleagues who helped me were found dead within a week. She gestured to the holographic evidence floating between them. This is the only complete record of what they've done and what they're planning. I was attempting to secure passage off-world when you found me. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, mind racing. Everything he'd believed about this assignment had been a lie. If Illyria was telling the truth, and the evidence suggested she was, then he'd unwittingly been complicit in covering up the development of weapons that could redefine warfare and genocide. "They'll be tracking both of us now," he said finally. "My QD equipment likely has hidden locators. Already neutralized." Illyria gestured to a signal-dampening field surrounding the hideout. "But we can't stay here long. Their search will become more thorough once they regroup." "We?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. Illyria's mercury eyes studied him intently. "You've seen the evidence. You know what's at stake. And now you're a loose end just like me." She stepped closer, her alien features somehow vulnerable despite their otherness. "I don't trust easily, Detective Flynn, especially not humans. But right now, survival suggests we have aligned interests." Something shifted between them in that moment, an unspoken recognition of shared danger and purpose that transcended species. Marcus had spent years drowning his failures in gambling and alcohol, running from responsibilities and connections. Now, faced with a conspiracy that threatened millions, he felt something long dormant awakening within him. Purpose. Resolve. "If we're going to stop them, we need proof that can't be buried or discredited," he said. "Data files can be dismissed as forgeries. We need physical evidence from their primary research facility." "You're suggesting we break into one of the most secure corporate installations in Neo-Tokyo?" Illyria's bioluminescence brightened with what Marcus interpreted as surprise. "I'm suggesting we finish what you started." Marcus checked his weapons and equipment with renewed determination. "But first, we need to disappear properly. I know people who can help with that, if they haven't changed their rates since my police days." As they prepared to move, Marcus caught Illyria watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. She seemed to be reassessing him, perhaps wondering if she'd misjudged this human after all. "Why help me?" she asked finally. "Your debt would be cleared just by walking away." Marcus considered the question, surprising himself with the honesty of his answer. "Because I've spent too many years looking the other way. And some lines shouldn't be crossed, not even for corporations that think they own the stars." The faint curve of her lips might have been a smile. In the dim light of her makeshift refuge, with danger closing in from all sides, an unlikely partnership was forged between a burned-out detective and an alien scientist, both pursued by forces that would stop at nothing to silence them, both driven by the desperate hope that together they might yet expose a truth too terrible to imagine. The Quantum Dynamics Research Facility towered over Neo-Tokyo's Innovation District, its crystalline spires reflecting the city's endless lights like a monument to corporate supremacy. From their vantage point in an abandoned surveillance drone hangar 12 blocks away, Marcus and Illyria studied the building's defenses through enhanced optics. 3 days of planning, and it still looks impossible, Marcus muttered, lowering the binoculars. In the 72 hours since their escape from Old Tokyo, they'd moved constantly, leveraging every contact from Marcus's checkered past. His old partner Kenji, now running a cybersecurity firm in the gray market, had provided them with security protocols. A Cephalian forger named Vex had constructed new identities. All at costs that had emptied Marcus's emergency accounts. "Nothing is impossible with proper genetic sequencing," Illyria replied, her focus unwavering as she made final adjustments to a device barely larger than a credit chip. "This genetic masker should allow me to pass as human through their biometric scanners, but only for 30 minutes before cellular degradation begins." "And you're sure about the access codes?" "Dr. Saito gave his life to get them to me." Her mercury eyes clouded briefly. "He was my mentor when I first joined QD. When I discovered Project Eclipse's true purpose, he was the only human who believed me." Marcus studied her alien features, now showing subtle signs of strain. They'd barely slept these past days, moving between safe houses while QD's security forces and mercenaries turned Neo-Tokyo upside down looking for them. Media outlets were broadcasting their images hourly, Marcus portrayed as a corrupt ex-cop who'd kidnapped a valuable corporate asset, Illyria as a dangerous alien terrorist. Yet in those same sleepless nights, he'd glimpsed unexpected depths in his alien companion. Her brilliance was matched only by her compassion, even for humans, a species that had given her little reason for trust. During quiet moments between planning sessions, she'd told him about her homeworld, Lyria Prime, with its twin moons and crystalline forests. He'd shared stories of his time in Xenocrime Division before his fall from grace. "You never fully explained why you left the Force," she said now, as if reading his thoughts. Perhaps she was. Lyrian telepathy was still largely undocumented in human scientific literature. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I caught my division commander taking bribes from alien trafficking rings. Reported it through proper channels. Next thing I knew, evidence was planted in my apartment suggesting I was the one on the take." He shrugged, old bitterness resurfacing. Internal Affairs was very thorough in their investigation. Very public too. Illyria's slender fingers briefly touched his arm, the first voluntary contact she'd initiated. "Your species has a remarkable capacity for both corruption and courage, often in the same individual. Is that a compliment or an insult?" Her lips curved slightly. "An observation." The moment shattered as Kenji's voice crackled through their encrypted comms. "Security patrol approaching your position. ETA 3 minutes. "That's our cue," Marcus said, gathering their equipment. "You remember the plan?" Illyria nodded, activating the genetic masker. Her luminescent blue skin rippled, molecules realigning until she appeared entirely human, olive-skinned with dark hair and brown eyes. Only a slight iridescence beneath her fingernails hinted at her true nature. "Fascinating," Marcus murmured. "It's painful," she replied matter-of-factly. "Cellular reconfiguration usually is." They moved silently through maintenance tunnels that connected Neo-Tokyo's gleaming towers, emerging 6 blocks from their target. Dressed in the crisp uniforms of QD's maintenance contractor, they approached the research facility through the service entrance, where tired workers shuffled through security at shift change. Marcus felt the familiar tension of undercover work tightening his muscles as they joined the queue. When they reached the checkpoint, he presented their forged credentials with practiced boredom. The guard barely glanced at their IDs before waving them through the initial scanner. The biometric verification was more thorough. Marcus held his breath as Illyria placed her hand on the scanner, her modified genetics being analyzed by the system. 1 second stretched into 3, then a green light flashed. "Maintenance access granted." "Sector 7B, the automated system announced." Once inside, they moved with purposeful efficiency through service corridors, avoiding security cameras with routes mapped from stolen schematics. Illyria checked her vital signs monitor, 25 minutes before the genetic masker failed. "The primary research lab for Project Eclipse is on sublevel 5, she whispered as they entered a service elevator. "We need a biological sample and accompanying documentation linking it directly to QD executive authorization." Marcus nodded, inserting Kenji's hacked security chip into the elevator control panel. "And we have 20 minutes to get it without being detected by the most advanced security system in Neo-Tokyo." "Like I said, impossible." 24 minutes, Illyria corrected as the elevator descended. "I've always found human pessimism oddly endearing." The elevator opened onto a sterile white corridor with laboratory doors spaced at regular intervals. Unlike the upper levels, this area was nearly deserted. Research staff worked day shifts, with only security details remaining overnight. Following memorized directions, they located Laboratory 7, where the core Project Eclipse research was conducted. The door required both keycard access and retinal verification. Marcus deployed Kenji's security bypass while Illyria prepared the retinal spoofer containing Dr. Sato's eye pattern. "Security patrol in adjoining corridor," Kenji's voice warned through their earpieces. 2 minutes out. Marcus worked faster, sweat beading on his forehead as the security panel flashed red twice before finally turning green. The reinforced door hissed open, and they slipped inside, securing it behind them. The laboratory was a marvel of modern xenogenetic research. Suspended animation chambers lined one wall, containing specimens Marcus couldn't identify. Holographic displays showed molecular structures rotating in 3 dimensions, while automated research stations ran continuous tests on biological samples. There, Illyria pointed to a sealed containment unit at the center of the lab. That's the primary Eclipse delivery system, a programmable virus designed to recognize specific genetic markers. She moved toward it with reverent dread while Marcus accessed a nearby terminal, beginning the download of research documentation. 17 minutes, he reminded her, watching the door. If Director Chen authorized this program, there must be a directive with her signature or biometrics. Illyria carefully extracted samples from the containment unit, securing them in specialized transport cases. Most authorization would be compartmentalized. Plausible deniability is a human specialty. Check the internal communications logs, Marcus suggested. Even paranoid executives slip up occasionally. As they worked, Marcus became increasingly aware of Illyria's labored breathing. The genetic massacre was taking its toll earlier than expected. Beads of blue began to show through her synthesized human skin. "We need to hurry," he urged. "I've found something," she called from a secure terminal. Project Eclipse Phase 3 authorization, signed by Chen and the entire executive board. She inserted a data crystal, initiating transfer. This links them directly to planned deployment against colonial settlements in the Proxima system, humans and aliens alike. Why target their own species? Marcus asked, helping her collect the final evidence samples. The colonies have been pushing for independence. This would allow selective elimination of problem populations while maintaining infrastructure. Her disgust was palpable. Mass murder disguised as a tragic epidemic. A security alarm suddenly blared, red lights flashing throughout the laboratory. "We've been made," Kenji's voice crackled urgently. "Security overrode my loop on sublevel surveillance. Armed response teams deploying from all access points." Marcus's training kicked in. "How many minutes to extraction point?" "4, minimum," Illyria answered, securing the last sample. Her disguise was failing rapidly now, patches of blue skin showing through the human facade. "That's a problem." Marcus checked the ammunition in his pulse pistol. "Because we've got about 2 minutes before this place is swarming with security forces." The laboratory door's reinforced locks engaged with a heavy thud, security protocol initiating containment procedures. Marcus tried the override codes, but the system rejected them. "They've locked us in," he confirmed grimly. "Kenji, we need an alternate route." Only static answered. Their communications had been jammed. Illyria moved to his side, her appearance now a disturbing hybrid of human and Lyrian features. "There's another way." She gestured toward the environmental control system. "The specimen ventilation shafts connect to the main atmospheric regulation system. They're narrow, but navigable." "That's a 2-meter thick wall we'd need to cut through," Marcus objected, eyeing the reinforced paneling. "Not for me." Illyria closed her mercury eyes, her bioluminescence intensifying to an almost painful brightness. The genetic masker device on her wrist sparked and smoked as she appeared to concentrate deeply. Before Marcus could question her, the metal wall panel began to vibrate, then warp, as if being subjected to immense pressure. With a sound like tearing fabric, the molecules of the metal began to separate, creating an opening just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Marcus stared in disbelief. "You never mentioned you could do that." Illyria's skin had fully reverted to its natural blue, her white hair falling free as the human disguise disintegrated entirely. Lyrian molecular manipulation. A closely guarded evolutionary adaptation. She swayed slightly, clearly exhausted by the effort. It's not something we advertise to other species. The pounding of armored boots echoed from the corridor outside. Marcus made a split-second decision, helping Illyria toward the opening she'd created. You first, he insisted, supporting her weight as she crawled into the narrow shaft. He followed quickly, pulling the evidence case behind him just as the laboratory door burst open behind them, security forces pouring in with weapons drawn. The ventilation shaft was claustrophobically tight, forcing them to crawl on elbows and knees through near darkness. Illyria's natural bioluminescence provided their only light as they navigated the maze of environmental controls. Why didn't you use your molecular manipulation before? Marcus whispered as they paused at a junction, checking Kenji's facility map. Illyria's mercury eyes reflected both exhaustion and wariness. Because it requires immense energy and leaves genetic markers that can be traced. And because my species has been hunted for this ability before. Her voice softened. Trust is earned gradually, Detective Flynn. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of what she'd revealed. Left here should lead to the exterior ventilation output. From there, we're 4 stories up with no easy way down. I have enough energy for one more manipulation, Illyria offered. Though I may lose consciousness afterward. Save it, Marcus replied, touching her arm gently. I didn't spend my gambling years without learning a few tricks. They reached the external vent as alarms continued to blare throughout the facility. Marcus removed a thin cable from his equipment belt, a tactical descent line capable of supporting twice his weight. He secured it to the ventilation housing and tested its strength. This will hold us both, he assured her, fashioning a harness that would allow him to carry Illyria's weight along with the evidence case. She studied him with those unnerving mercury eyes. You continue to surprise me, Marcus Flynn. Likewise, he replied, securing her against his chest in the improvised harness. The close contact brought an unexpected awareness of her alienness, her skin cool against his, her heartbeat a rhythm unlike any human pulse. Yet there was something comforting in the proximity, a trust neither had expected to develop. With security forces closing in, Marcus kicked open the vent cover and they plunged into the night air of Neo-Tokyo, descending along the building's exterior as searchlights tracked frantically across the facade above them. They were exposed, vulnerable, with kilometers of hostile territory between them and safety. But as they touched down on the maintenance level and Marcus caught Illyria when her strength finally failed, one certainty remained between them: there was no turning back. They had the evidence that could bring down quantum dynamics, but more importantly, they had forged a connection that neither had anticipated when this pursuit began. In the neon-lit shadows of Neo-Tokyo, a human detective and an alien scientist had become something unexpected, partners who trusted each other with their lives, even as the most powerful forces in the solar system mobilized to silence them forever. Dawn broke over Neo-Tokyo, painting the skyline in hues of amber and gold that belied the chaos about to unfold. Marcus stood at the window of their final sanctuary, a forgotten atmospheric monitoring station nestled among the upper spires of the financial district. Behind him, Illyria worked feverishly at an array of commandeered communications equipment, her blue skin almost translucent from exhaustion. Transmission ready, she announced, looking up to meet his gaze. Once we broadcast, there's no undoing it. For days had passed since their escape from the quantum dynamics research facility. For days of desperate movement, calling in final favors, and narrowly evading capture. QD had dropped all pretense now, deploying hunter-killer drones and offering rewards that had turned half of Neo-Tokyo into bounty hunters. Marcus had been shot twice, glancing wounds that Illyria's Lyrian medicine had sealed but not fully healed. Yet somehow in those same blood-soaked days, something profound had crystallized between them. In stolen moments of respite, physical barriers had dissolved along with cultural ones. The first kiss had been unexpected, his lips against hers after a near miss with security forces had left them breathless and alive in equal measure. What followed later had been inevitable, a connection that transcended species in the face of mortality's shadow. The evidence is irrefutable, Marcus said, turning from the window. QD's Project Eclipse violates every xenobiological weapons treaty in existence. Once this goes public, not even their board connections can protect them. Unless they control the narrative. Illyria's mercury eyes reflected concern. Corporate conglomerates have weathered scandals before by offering sacrificial executives and cosmetic reforms. That's why we're hitting all channels simultaneously: government oversight committees, independent media, academic institutions, even competitive corporations. Too many recipients for them to silence. Marcus checked his modified pulse pistol, their last line of defense if the worst happened. Is the package ready for Kenji? Illyria nodded, her slender fingers sealing a specialized containment unit containing biological samples and original research documentation. If we're compromised, he'll ensure distribution. The finality of their preparations hung in the air between them. They'd planned everything possible, considered every contingency except the one neither wanted to acknowledge, that this crusade would likely end with their deaths. Marcus crossed the room, kneeling beside her chair. When this is over. I know, she interrupted softly, placing cool fingers against his cheek. We've both considered the statistical improbability of our survival. I was going to say, when this is over, I'm taking you to old Earth. There's this place in what used to be Norway, fjords they call them. The light there reminds me of your eyes. A sound escaped her, something between laughter and sorrow. You continue to defy predictive modeling, Marcus Flynn. Her forehead pressed against his. I would like to see these fjords. The moment fractured as proximity alarms blared throughout the station. Security feeds showed quantum dynamic security forces establishing perimeters on all adjacent structures. A corporate shuttle descended toward the platform above them, bearing the QD insignia. They found us. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, activating defensive protocols Kenji had installed. How? We ditched all traceable tech. Illyria's expression darkened as she studied the approaching forces. They shouldn't have been able to, she stopped suddenly, her eyes widening. Unless. The realization hit Marcus simultaneously. They're tracking your genetic signature. The lab exposure, they must have isolated your specific markers during the break-in. She nodded grimly. My unique Lyrian patterns would be unmistakable compared to Neo-Tokyo's regular alien population. Can you mask it? Not without significant cellular damage. And not quickly. She returned to the transmission array. We need to broadcast now. Marcus activated final defenses as Illyria prepared the data package. Outside, precision drones took position around the structure while armored troops deployed to entry points. The shuttle had landed, its ramp extending to reveal a familiar figure, Naomi Chen, Director of Quantum Dynamic Security, flanked by elite guards. 2 minutes until they breached the upper levels, Marcus warned, securing blast shields over vulnerable points. Illyria initiated the broadcast sequence, then unexpectedly staggered, clutching the edge of the console. Marcus was at her side instantly, supporting her weight as her knees buckled. What's wrong? My cellular integrity is failing. She gestured to faint blue lines spreading beneath her skin. The extended use of molecular manipulation during our escape accelerated genetic degradation. You said nothing. There was nothing to be done. Her mercury eyes met his, apologetic yet determined. The broadcast requires 3 minutes to complete full transmission to all targets. We may not have that long. The first explosions rocked the upper floor as QD forces began their assault. Automated defenses returned fire, buying precious seconds. I'll hold them off, Marcus said, moving toward the access stairwell. Just make sure that transmission completes. Marcus. Her voice stopped him at the doorway. There's something you should know about Project Eclipse. The intensity of her gaze made him pause despite the urgency surrounding them. The primary genetic template they used for human targeting, it was yours. She watched comprehension dawn on his face. Your unique genetic structure provided ideal markers for human-specific variants. When you were in Xenocrime Division, your medical samples were diverted to QD's Research Division. Marcus felt the revelation like a physical blow. My DNA is part of a weapon designed to kill humans? Not just part, the foundation. That's why Chen selected you for this assignment. If you succeeded in capturing me, you would have been eliminated afterward as a final loose end. If you failed, your death would still serve their purpose, the martyred ex-cop killed by a dangerous alien. The betrayal twisted inside him, deeper than he'd imagined possible. Before he could respond, the building shook violently as a more substantial explosive breached the upper floor. 60 more seconds for full transmission, Illyria reported, her fingers flying across controls as systems began fail around them. Marcus took position at the stairwell entry, pulse pistol raised. Keep that broadcast going. No matter what. The door blew inward in a shower of debris. Marcus fired precise shots that dropped the first 3 security operatives who charged through. The next wave deployed flash suppressors that temporarily blinded him, forcing him to fire defensively as he retreated toward Illyria's position. 30 seconds, she called, her voice strained. QD forces established a position at the entrance, deploying a mobile shield generator that rebuffed Marcus's attacks. Behind it, Director Chen appeared, her corporate uniform pristine despite the combat surrounding her. Detective Flynn, she called, her voice carrying the same professional detachment as when she'd first offered him the contract. This doesn't need to end violently. The alien has manipulated you with falsified information. Save it, Chen. Marcus fired again, forcing her guards to maintain their defensive posture. I've seen the evidence. Project Eclipse isn't exactly something you can spin as research and development. Progress requires difficult decisions. Humanity's survival depends on maintaining dominance in an increasingly hostile galaxy. Her expression hardened. And sometimes, sacrifices must be made. She nodded to her security team, who deployed a specialized weapon, one Marcus recognized with growing horror as a prototype Eclipse delivery system. A targeted bioweapon. 15 seconds, Illyria called, her voice weaker now. Chen's voice carried an almost regretful tone. You could have been remembered as a hero, detective. Now you'll be another statistical casualty in a terrorist incident. The security team activated the device, which began emitting a fine aerosol mist. Marcus knew instantly what it contained, the programmable virus keyed to his specific genetic code. Transmission at 90%, Illyria reported, her fingers never leaving the controls despite the danger advancing toward them. Marcus felt the first burning sensation in his lungs as the aerosol reached him. His neural implant flashed warnings of cellular degradation beginning in his respiratory system. The bioweapon was designed to work quickly, minutes rather than hours. Chen watched dispassionately. The Lyrian will be taken alive for study. Her unique abilities merit further research. Marcus's vision began to blur as the weapon attacked his system. He staggered back toward Illyria, determined to provide coverage until the transmission completed. 10 seconds, she whispered, her mercury eyes wide with horror as she watched the bioweapon taking effect. With supreme effort, Marcus maintained his position, firing repeatedly to keep Chen's forces at bay as his body began to betray him. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, internal hemorrhaging already beginning. 5 seconds, Illyria said, one hand reaching for him while the other remained on the controls. Chen seemed to realize what was happening. Stop that transmission, she ordered, her professional facade finally cracking. Kill them both if necessary. 3 seconds, Illyria counted, her voice breaking. 2, 1. A soft tone confirmed completion just as Marcus collapsed, his pistol clattering to the floor. Illyria caught him, cradling his convulsing body. "It's done," she whispered. "We did it, Marcus." Chen screamed orders as her security team rushed forward, but Illyria paid them no attention. Her focus remained entirely on Marcus, whose breathing had become labored as the bioweapon ravaged his system. "I'm sorry," he managed, blood flecking his lips. "About those fjords." "Be still," she commanded, placing her hands on either side of his face. "I can help you, but you must trust me completely." Her bioluminescence intensified to an almost blinding degree as she pressed her forehead against his. "What I'm about to do, no Lyrian has attempted with a human before." Marcus felt her consciousness touching his, not the gentle probe he'd experienced during their first meeting, but a deep, fundamental connection that seemed to reach into the very building blocks of his being. "Your DNA is being attacked," her voice explained within his mind. "I can temporarily substitute Lyrian patterns to shield your vital systems, but the cellular transformation will be significant." Understanding came instantly. She was offering to fundamentally alter his genetic structure, to make him partly Lyrian to save his life. The potential consequences were unknown, irreversible. As Chen's security forces closed in, Marcus made his choice, surrendering completely to Illyria's mental touch. The world exploded into light and sensation as molecular manipulation began at the deepest level of his being. Every cell screamed in simultaneous agony and rebirth as Lyrian DNA interwove with his human patterns, creating something entirely new. His body arched, energy cascading through him in waves that repelled the approaching security team. Chen watched in disbelief as tendrils of blue light spread across Marcus's skin, illuminating his veins from within. The bioweapon designed to target his specific human markers found itself attacking cells that no longer existed in their original form. "Impossible," she whispered, backing away as the transformation intensified. Illyria maintained the connection until the process stabilized, then collapsed beside Marcus, her energy completely depleted. His eyes opened slowly, human in shape but with irises that now contained flecks of Lyrian mercury. He reached for her hand as awareness returned, feeling the new strength flowing through his transformed body. The bioweapon had been neutralized, rendered ineffective against his hybrid physiology. Around them, chaos erupted as emergency alerts blared throughout Neo-Tokyo. Their broadcast had reached its destinations. Holographic news reports flickered to life on abandoned screens, showing quantum dynamics facilities being surrounded by planetary security forces. The Eclipse project exposed in its entirety. Chen's composure shattered completely as her communicator filled with crisis alerts. "This changes nothing," she snarled, drawing a sidearm. "Accidents happen during terrorist apprehension. No one will question 2 more casualties." Before she could fire, Marcus moved with speed that surprised even him, his partially Lyrian reflexes propelling him forward. He disarmed Chen with a single fluid motion, forcing her to her knees as security forces hesitated, uncertain in the face of what they'd witnessed. "Naomi Chen," he said, his voice carrying a new harmonic quality, "you're under arrest for crimes against sentient beings, illegal weapons development, and conspiracy to commit genocide." As if on cue, the facility's outer doors burst open as independent security forces stormed in, Kenji leading a team of planetary authorities whose jurisdiction superseded corporate sovereignty. Always had a flair for dramatic timing, Marcus called to his old partner, never releasing his grip on Chen. Kenji surveyed the scene with professional assessment, particularly noting Marcus's altered appearance. "You look like hell, Flynn. You should see the other guy." Marcus glanced down at his hands, where faint blue luminescence now pulsed beneath his skin. "Though I guess the other guy is partially me now." As authorities secured Chen and her security team, Marcus returned to Illyria, who remained weakened but conscious. He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight against him. "What happens now?" she asked softly, her mercury eyes searching his altered ones. "You're neither fully human nor Lyrian." "Sounds like a perfect qualification for bridging two worlds," he replied, his arm tightening around her waist. "Someone will need to ensure the technology from Project Eclipse is completely dismantled. That the right people are held accountable. And after that," she pressed, a vulnerability in her voice that few would ever hear. Marcus thought of the future unfolding before them, uncertain, unprecedented, but somehow right. "After that, I believe I promised to show you some fjords." Outside, Neo-Tokyo transformed as the news spread across every channel and communication network. Corporate security forces stood down as planetary authorities moved in. The evidence they'd sacrificed everything to obtain now played on endless loops, irrefutable proof of crimes that could not be buried or denied. As medical teams arrived to attend to their injuries, Marcus and Illyria remained together, two beings from different worlds who had found something neither expected in the shadows they'd been chasing. Not just justice or redemption, but a connection that transcended species and circumstance. In the chaos of that final stand, they had lost parts of themselves, he, his fully human identity, she, her isolated independence. Yet in that same crucible, they had forged something new, a bridge between worlds, a testament to what became possible when differences were embraced rather than weaponized. And as Neo-Tokyo's endless twilight gave way to the promise of a new dawn, they faced it together, neither human nor alien, but simply two souls who had found in each other something worth fighting for, worth changing for, worth living for. The shadows they had chased had finally given way to light.